It was a chilly Tuesday evening when Robert Langley, the CEO of Burger Haven, parked his car in the dimly lit lot of one of his busiest locations. He wasn't here to inspect or micromanage. He was here to work. Dressed in baggy jeans, an oversized hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He looked like just another employee trying to make ends meet. His identity as the head of a multi-million-dollar fast food empire was completely hidden. No one suspected that the man now walking through the back door, carrying a duffel bag filled with plain clothes, was their boss. Robert had always been curious about what really went on behind the scenes at his restaurants. Sure, he got reports, pages and pages of numbers detailing sales figures, customer feedback, and inventory levels. But those reports only told part of the story. Lately, something felt off. Profits were up, but complaints from customers were increasing. Employees seemed disengaged and turnover rates were higher than ever. Something wasn't working and Robert wanted to find out why. That's how he ended up signing up for Undercover Boss, a reality TV show where executives go undercover to experience life on the front lines of their businesses. For Robert, this wasn't just about ratings or publicity. It was personal. He wanted to reconnect with the heart of his company, the people who kept it running day and night. And if there was one place where things got real, it was the night shift. The manager greeted him warmly as he arrived. "Hey, newbie," she said with a smile. "Welcome to the team. You'll be working the fry station tonight, don't worry. We'll train you." Robert nodded, doing his best to act casual. Inside, though, he was nervous. He hadn't worked a fryer since college, and even then it was more of a summer gig than anything serious. This was different. These employees didn't know who he was, and they weren't going to cut him any slack. If he messed up, they'd let him know. His first task? Learning how to operate the fry machine. A seasoned cook named Pete showed him the ropes. "Okay, listen up," Pete said, crossing his arms. "This ain't rocket science, but you gotta pay attention. Drop the fries in the basket, wait for the timer to beep, shake them twice, dump them into the tray, and salt them lightly." "Got it?" "Got it," Robert replied, nodding confidently. But as soon as Pete walked away, he realized just how hard it actually was. The oil sizzled loudly, and the smell of grease filled the air. Every time he tried to grab the basket, it felt heavier than expected. By the end of his first hour, his hands were slick with sweat, and his shirt clung uncomfortably to his back. Still, Robert pushed through. He watched the other employees closely, marveling at how effortlessly they handled the chaos. Orders came in nonstop, and everyone moved with precision, knowing exactly what needed to be done. It was like watching a well-oiled machine, at least most of the time. What surprised Robert the most, however, wasn't the physical demands of the job. It was the camaraderie among the staff. Despite the long hours and relentless pace, they joked around, shared snacks during breaks, and genuinely supported each other. One cashier cracked jokes to lighten the mood when the line got too long. Another worker offered tips on how to speed up prep times without cutting corners. As the night wore on, Robert found himself growing more comfortable. He started recognizing patterns in the flow of orders and learning tricks to keep up with demand. But despite the progress, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was missing, not just here, but across the entire company. At around midnight, things slowed down enough for him to catch his breath. Leaning against the counter, he struck up a conversation with one of the cashiers, a young woman with bright eyes and a warm smile. She introduced herself and mentioned that she worked 2 jobs to support her family. "You must get tired doing all this," Robert said, genuinely curious. She shrugged. "Yeah, sometimes, but it's worth it. I'm saving up for school, so..." Her words stayed with him long after their chat ended. Here was someone juggling responsibilities far beyond her years, yet still managing to stay positive. How many others like her were out there, quietly keeping the business afloat while facing challenges no one else saw? By the time his shift ended at 4 a.m., Robert was exhausted, but also intrigued. He had come seeking answers, but instead he found questions. Questions about empathy, resilience, and what it truly meant to serve others. Little did he know, the real lesson was still waiting for him, just a few shifts away. The first few nights of Robert's undercover journey were eye-opening. but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. On his fourth night working the graveyard shift, he met someone who would leave a lasting impression on him. Not just as a boss, but as a person. It was around 11 p.m. and the restaurant wasn't too busy. Most of the customers had come in for quick meals before heading home or grabbing snacks during late-night drives. Robert was stationed near the cash register, helping out with cleaning duties while keeping an ear open for anything interesting. That's when he noticed her, a young cashier with a quiet energy that seemed to light up the room. She wasn't particularly loud or outgoing, but there was something about the way she interacted with people that caught Robert's attention. She greeted every customer with a genuine smile, even the ones who were clearly tired or grumpy. When someone hesitated over their order, she offered suggestions without being pushy. If a child came to the counter with their parents, she'd compliment their shirt or ask about their day. It was small stuff, sure, but it made a big difference. During a brief lull in activity, Robert decided to strike up a conversation. He figured it might help him blend in better if he got to know his coworkers a little more personally. Plus, he was genuinely curious about her. So, he began casually as they both wiped down trays together. "How long have you been working here?" She glanced at him, then smiled softly. "About 2 years now. I started part-time while finishing high school and stayed on after graduation." 2 years? "That's impressive," Robert said, nodding. "Most people don't stick around that long. What keeps you coming back?" Her expression shifted slightly, and for a moment she looked thoughtful. "Honestly, it's not just the paycheck. Don't get me wrong, the money helps. But this place, it feels like home sometimes. You know, like everyone here is family, we've all got each other's backs." Robert raised an eyebrow. Family? This was the last thing he expected to hear from someone working late-night shifts at a fast food joint. Family, huh? That's cool. Do you think a lot of people feel that way around here? She shrugged. Some do, some don't. But for me, it's important. My situation's kind of complicated, so having a place where I feel supported means a lot. Her words intrigued Robert even more. Complicated how? She hesitated for a second, as if debating whether or not to share. Then, with a deep breath, she opened up. "Well, my parents passed away a few years ago. I'm the oldest, so I've been taking care of my younger siblings ever since. They're great kids, but it's tough, you know? Between school, work, and making sure they're okay, there's not much time left for myself." Robert felt a lump form in his throat. Here was this young woman, barely out of her teens, shouldering responsibilities that would overwhelm most adults. And yet she spoke about it matter-of-factly, as though it were just another part of life. "That sounds really hard," he managed to say. "How do you manage everything?" Another shrug. "I just take it one day at a time. Work pays the bills and school gives me hope for the future. I'm studying social work online, actually. One day I want to open a community center for families who need help. Somewhere safe where kids can go after school, and parents can find resources if they're struggling." Robert stared at her, completely floored. Not only was she surviving under immense pressure, but she also had dreams bigger than herself. Dreams that involved giving back to others. "You're amazing," he blurted out before he could stop himself. She laughed lightly, brushing off the compliment. "Not really, I just do what I can. Everyone's got problems, mine are just louder than most." Before Robert could respond, a new wave of customers arrived, signaling the end of their chat. As she returned to her station, he couldn't help but watch her closely. Every interaction she had with customers was filled with warmth and patience. Even when someone complained about their order or snapped at her, she remained calm and professional. Later, that night, during another slow period, she shared more snippets of her life. She talked about her siblings, how proud she was of them despite their challenges, and her plans for the future. She admitted that some days were harder than others, especially when bills piled up or exhaustion set in, but she never let those struggles define her. "You're stronger than you think," Robert told her sincerely. "Thanks," she replied with a faint smile. "But I'm not special. Lots of people deal with worse every single day. I just try to focus on the good stuff, you know? Like my siblings' laughter or the fact that I'm still standing. That counts for something. Her perspective struck a chord deep within Robert. As a CEO, he was used to thinking in terms of numbers and strategies. Profits, losses, growth margins. Those were the metrics that mattered in boardroom discussions. But standing here now, listening to this young woman talk about resilience and gratitude, he realized just how narrow-minded that approach was. By the end of the night, Robert found himself reflecting on everything she'd said. He admired her strength, her optimism, and her unwavering commitment to helping others, even when she had so little herself. In many ways, she embodied the spirit of Burger Haven far better than any corporate slogan ever could. As he clocked out and headed to his car, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing something extraordinary. This young woman wasn't just an employee. She was a reminder of why businesses existed in the first place, to serve people. And somewhere along the way, he feared that message had gotten lost. Little did he know, the most powerful lesson was still waiting for him. The very next night, he would witness an act of kindness so profound that it would change the way he viewed leadership and humanity forever. The night started like any other, with the hum of fryers and the clatter of trays filling the air. Robert had grown more comfortable in his role as a fry cook, though he still struggled to keep up with the pace during busy rushes. The team worked seamlessly together, each person knowing their part without needing constant reminders. But tonight felt different somehow, quieter, yet charged with an energy that made Robert pay closer attention. Around 2 a.m., when most people were asleep, in bed, a young man walked into the restaurant. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped under the weight of what seemed like endless stress. His clothes weren't dirty exactly, but they were worn. A hoodie 2 sizes too big, jeans patched at the knees, and sneakers that had seen better days. He hesitated near the entrance before finally making his way to the counter where the cashier from the previous night was stationed. Robert watched from a distance, pretending to restock napkins while keeping one eye on the interaction. The young man scanned the menu board slowly, his fingers tapping nervously against the edge of the counter. After a moment, he spoke softly, almost as if he didn't want anyone else to hear him. "I'll take the $1 menu burger," he said, pulling out a crumpled handful of bills from his pocket. His hands trembled slightly as he counted the money, separating coins from paper. Robert noticed how carefully he handled each coin, rolling them between his thumb and forefinger before placing them on the counter. The cashier smiled warmly, her voice steady and kind. "Sure thing. Anything else for you tonight?" The young man shook his head quickly. "No, just the burger." As she rang up the order, something caught her attention. The total came to $1.50, but the pile of change in front of her only added up to $1.45. She glanced at the screen, then back at the young man who was now shifting uncomfortably. His cheeks flushed red and he muttered, I thought I had enough." For a split second, no one moved. The silence stretched thin, heavy with uncertainty. Then, without hesitation, the cashier reached into her own pocket and pulled out a few coins. She dropped them onto the counter alongside the rest of the money. "It's okay," she said gently. "Don't worry about it. Happens to all of us sometimes." The young man froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Wait, are you paying for my meal?" She nodded, her smile unwavering. "Yeah, it's not a big deal, really. But why?" he stammered, clearly overwhelmed by the gesture. "You don't even know me." Her response was simple and sincere. "Because we've all been there. Trust me, I get it. And if covering 50 cents means you leave here feeling a little less stressed, then it's worth it." Tears welled up in the young man's eyes, though he tried hard to blink them away. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'll pay you back someday, I promise." She waved him off with a laugh. "No need. Just pass it on when you can, okay?" He nodded, clutching the bag containing his burger tightly as he turned to leave. As the door closed behind him, Robert stood rooted to the spot, completely stunned. What he'd just witnessed wasn't just generosity. It was humanity at its purest. This young woman, who worked tirelessly to support her family and barely scraped by herself, had given away part of her own paycheck to help a stranger. Unable to contain his curiosity, or maybe his disbelief, he approached her once the line cleared. "Why did you do that?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. His tone betrayed the mix of admiration and confusion swirling inside him. She looked up, surprised by the question. "Do what?" "You know, pay for his meal. You didn't have to do that." Her expression softened and she shrugged as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Because he needed it. Look, I've been in his shoes before. There were nights when I couldn't afford dinner, let alone breakfast the next morning. If someone had done that for me back then, it would have meant everything. So yeah, I paid for his burger, no big deal." "No big deal?" Robert echoed, incredulous. That's incredible. Most people wouldn't think twice about letting him walk away empty-handed." "Well, maybe they should," she replied simply. "We're all just trying to make it through the day, right? Sometimes a little kindness goes a long way." Her words hit Robert like a punch to the gut. Here was someone who understood struggle intimately, yet chose to act with compassion anyway. It wasn't calculated or performative. It was instinctive, born out of empathy and lived experience. As the night wore on, Robert couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. Every time he replayed the scene in his mind, he felt a renewed sense of awe and guilt. How many times had he sat in meetings debating budgets and profit margins without considering the human impact? How often had decisions been made based solely on numbers, ignoring the stories behind them? By the time his shift ended, Robert knew one thing for certain. This young woman had shown him something profound. Her act of kindness wasn't just about feeding someone. It was about dignity, connection, and reminding others that they mattered. In a world obsessed with efficiency and bottom lines, she represented something rare and beautiful: the power of selflessness. And as he drove home, exhausted but inspired, Robert realized that this moment would stay with him forever. It wasn't just a random act of goodwill, it was a call to action. A reminder that businesses, no matter how large or successful, existed to serve people, not profits, not shareholders, people. Little did he know this revelation was only the beginning. The next few days were a blur for Robert. He couldn't stop thinking about what he'd witnessed: the cashier's quiet act of kindness, the young man's gratitude, and the ripple effect it must have created in both their lives. It gnawed at him, not because it was surprising that someone could be kind, but because it felt so rare in today's world. Or maybe it wasn't rare at all. He just hadn't been paying attention. On his 5th night working undercover, Robert decided to dig deeper. He wanted to understand why this young woman thought nothing of giving away part of her paycheck to help a stranger. What drove her to prioritize others over herself? Was it upbringing, circumstance, or something deeper? During another slow stretch, he found himself leaning against the counter near her station. She was busy wiping down the soda machine, humming softly to herself as she worked. Robert cleared his throat to get her attention. "Hey," he said, casually, "can I ask you something?" She turned to face him, her brow furrowing slightly. "Sure. What's up?" "I've been thinking about what happened the other night," he began, choosing his words carefully. "You know, when you paid for that guy's burger. Why did you do it? Most people wouldn't." Her expression softened and she let out a small laugh. "Honestly, I don't really think about it too much. Like I said before, we've all been there. When you're struggling, even something small like skipping a meal can feel huge. If I can take that weight off someone's shoulders for a little while, why wouldn't I?" "But doesn't it bother you?" Robert pressed. "I mean, you're already juggling so much. Work, school, your family, giving away your own money. Doesn't that make things harder for you?" She paused, considering his question. Then, with a thoughtful look, she replied, "Yeah, sometimes it does, but here's the thing. Life is tough enough without people kicking you when you're down. If I can afford to give 50 cents or $1 or whatever, it's worth it. Because trust me, I know what it's like to feel invisible, to feel like nobody cares. And if doing something tiny like that makes someone feel seen, then it's not charity. It's community." Robert stared at her, struck by the simplicity and depth of her answer. Community. That word carried so much weight, yet it rolled off her tongue effortlessly. She didn't see her actions as extraordinary. She saw them as necessary. Necessary for survival, for connection, for keeping humanity alive in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. He wanted to say more, to tell her how inspiring she was. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. As they went back to work, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing next to someone remarkable, someone who understood the true meaning of service. Not just serving food, but serving others. Later that night, after closing time, Robert sat alone in his car, replaying the conversation in his head. He thought about the countless meetings he'd attended where executives debated cost-cutting measures and profit margins. He remembered the reports highlighting customer complaints about slow service or incorrect orders. None of those discussions ever touched on empathy, compassion, or the human element that made businesses thrive or fail. It dawned on him that somewhere along the way, Burger Haven had lost its soul. Sure, the company was profitable, but at what cost? Employees were burned out, customers felt neglected, and the sense of purpose that once defined the brand had faded into the background. All the flashy marketing campaigns in the world couldn't fix what was broken inside. As he drove home, Robert realized that this young woman held the key to turning things around. Her perspective wasn't just valuable, it was revolutionary. She reminded him of why he started the company in the first place, to provide affordable meals to families, to create jobs for people who needed them, and to build a business rooted in care and connection. By the time he pulled into his driveway, an idea had begun to form in his mind. It wasn't fully fleshed out yet, but it was clear enough to keep him awake for hours. For the first time in years, Robert felt excited about the future, not just for himself, but for everyone involved in making Burger Haven what it was. The why? Following day, Robert called an emergency meeting with his executive team. They gathered in the sleek conference room at headquarters, laptops open and coffee cups steaming, ready to discuss quarterly earnings and operational efficiency. But Robert had something else on his agenda. Listen, he said, cutting straight to the point, we've got a problem, a big one, and it's not about sales numbers or market share. It's about us, about who we are as a company, and who we've stopped being. His team exchanged puzzled glances. This wasn't the usual tone of their meetings. Normally, Robert stuck to data-driven presentations and strategic plans. Today, however, he sounded almost emotional. I spent the last week working undercover at one of our busiest locations, he continued. What I saw changed my perspective completely. Our employees are stretched thin, our customers are frustrated, and the heart of our brand is slipping away. But I also saw something incredible. A reminder of why we exist. He went on to share the story of the cashier and her act of kindness. The room fell silent as he described the young man struggling to pay for his meal, the cashier reaching into her own pocket, and the profound impact of that simple gesture. By the time he finished, several members of the team looked visibly moved. So, here's what we're going to do, Robert declared, his voice firm. Starting immediately, we're launching a new initiative called Kindness Counts. Any employee caught performing an act of kindness, whether it's helping a coworker, assisting a customer, or volunteering in the community, will receive a bonus. No questions asked. The room erupted in murmurs of surprise. Bonuses for kindness? It sounded unconventional, even risky, but Robert wasn't done. And that's not all. He added, we're also rolling out a program nationwide to offer free meals to students during late-night hours. We'll call it Fuel for Futures. It'll give kids a safe place to grab a bite when they're studying or working late shifts. These aren't just initiatives. They're commitments. Commitments to our employees, our customers, and the communities we serve. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, the executives nodded in agreement. Some even clapped quietly, sensing that this was a turning point for the company. For years, they'd focused on growth and profits, but now they saw the value in putting people first. When Robert returned to the restaurant later that week, he couldn't wait to share the news. During a staff meeting held after closing time, he revealed his true identity to the team. Gasps filled the room as everyone processed the revelation that the clumsy fry cook was actually their CEO. Turning to the cashier, Robert expressed his gratitude. "You've taught me more about leadership in 5 days than I've learned in 20 years running this company," he admitted. "Your kindness reminded me why we started Burger Haven in the first place, to serve people, not just food." Her eyes widened in shock, but she quickly recovered, smiling shyly. "Wow, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Robert replied. "Just keep doing what you're doing and know that your actions are inspiring change, not just here, but across the entire company." As the staff erupted into applause, Robert felt a sense of pride he hadn't experienced in years. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but he knew they were on the right path. Together, they could rebuild the culture of compassion and care that had once defined Burger Haven. And it all started with a single act of kindness, one that proved even the smallest gestures could spark the biggest transformations. The moment Robert revealed his true identity, the energy in the room shifted. At first, there was silence, complete and utter disbelief. The team stared at him, their faces a mix of shock, confusion, and awe. Then slowly, the whispers began. "Wait, seriously, that's him? No way, he's been here all week? This is wild." Robert stood awkwardly under the spotlight, suddenly aware of how strange this must feel for everyone. For days, they'd treated him like just another coworker, a fry cook who struggled to keep up and asked too many questions. Now he was standing in front of them as the CEO of an entire chain, sharing plans that would reshape their lives and the company. "I know this might be overwhelming," he said, raising his hand slightly to calm the growing buzz. "But I need you to hear me out. What I've experienced here over the past week has changed the way I see our business, and it's going to change how we operate moving forward." He turned toward the cashier, whose kindness had inspired so much of what he was about to announce. "You especially deserve recognition," he told her sincerely. "Your actions reminded me of why we exist, not just to sell burgers, but to make a difference in people's lives. You've shown extraordinary leadership, even though you didn't have a title or a corner office. And because of that, I'm promoting you to assistant manager." Her jaw dropped. "What? Me? Are you sure?" "Yes," Robert replied with a grin. "Absolutely. You've earned it. Not only are you hardworking and dedicated, but you also understand the importance of empathy and connection. Those qualities are exactly what we need more of around here." The rest of the staff erupted into cheers and applause. Someone whistled loudly, while another employee gave her a playful nudge. She looked overwhelmed, tears welling up in her eyes as she tried to process everything happening around her. After the initial excitement died down, Robert took a deep breath and continued. "But this isn't just about one person. It's about all of you. Every single one of you plays a critical role in keeping this place running. Without your effort, Burger Haven wouldn't exist. So today, I'm announcing 2 major changes that will affect every location across the country." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The room grew quiet again, everyone leaning forward in anticipation. The first change is called Kindness Counts. From now on, any act of kindness, whether it's helping a customer, supporting a coworker, or volunteering in the community, will be rewarded with a bonus. No strings attached. We want to celebrate the moments when you go above and beyond to make someone's day better. The staff exchanged glances, some nodding approvingly. One employee raised his hand hesitantly. "Does that include stuff outside of work? Like if we help someone in the neighborhood?" "Absolutely," Robert answered without hesitation. "If it reflects the values we stand for, it counts. This isn't just about what happens inside these walls. It's about who we are as people." The second initiative, he explained, was called Fuel for Futures. Starting immediately, Burger Haven locations nationwide would offer free meals to students during late-night hours. "We know how tough it can be to balance work, school, and life," he said. "If we can give kids a safe place to grab a meal while they're studying or working late shifts, then we're doing our job. Food shouldn't be a luxury. It should be accessible to everyone." By the time Robert finished speaking, the room was buzzing with excitement. Employees hugged each other, shared ideas for how they could contribute, and started brainstorming ways to spread kindness in their own communities. For the first time in years, the atmosphere felt electric, not with stress or exhaustion, but with hope and possibility. In the weeks that followed, the impact of Robert's announcement rippled far beyond that single restaurant. Stories poured in from locations across the country about employees going above and beyond to make a difference. A crew member in Texas helped a stranded motorist change a flat tire. A manager in Ohio organized a food drive for families affected by flooding. Even customers got involved, sharing photos online of their favorite acts of kindness at Burger Haven stores. As for the young woman who inspired it all, her promotion marked the beginning of a new chapter. With her new role as assistant manager, she became a mentor to others, encouraging them to embrace the same spirit of generosity that defined her approach to work. Her leadership style wasn't about authority. It was about collaboration, trust, and lifting others up. One evening, after a particularly busy shift, she pulled Robert aside. "I still can't believe any of this is real," she admitted. "It feels like a dream sometimes." "It's very real," Robert assured her. "And none of it would have happened without you. You've reminded me, and everyone else, that success isn't measured by numbers. It's measured by the lives we touch." She smiled softly, her gaze thoughtful. "I guess I never realized how much power small actions can have, like paying for someone's meal, or just listening when someone needs to talk. It's crazy how those little things add up." "They do," Robert agreed. "And that's why we're going to keep building on this momentum. Together, we can create something truly special." Months later, the effects of the kindness counts and Fuel for Future's initiatives were undeniable. Employee morale soared, with turnover rates dropping significantly. Customers reported feeling more valued, leading to increased loyalty and positive word of mouth. Sales improved not because of flashy promotions, but because people genuinely wanted to support a company that cared. For Robert, the transformation went deeper than profits or public image. He found himself reconnecting with the passion that drove him to start Burger Haven in the first place. Walking through restaurants unannounced, talking to employees, and hearing their stories reignited his sense of purpose. It wasn't about being a CEO anymore. It was about being part of a movement. And as for the young woman whose act of kindness sparked it all, she continued to shine, both as an employee and as a leader. Her dream of opening a community center remained alive, fueled by the encouragement and resources provided by the company. Robert promised to personally assist her once she was ready to take that step, knowing full well that her vision aligned perfectly with Burger Haven's renewed mission. Through it all, one truth became clear. Compassion wasn't just good for business. It was essential. By putting people first, Robert and his team rediscovered the heart of their company. And in doing so, they proved that even the smallest gestures could lead to the biggest changes. Months turned into years, and the changes Robert had set in motion continued to grow and evolve. What started as a late-night act of kindness in a small 24-hour Burger Haven location blossomed into something much larger, a cultural shift that touched every corner of the company. It wasn't just about policies or programs anymore, it was about people. Real people, with real struggles and real dreams, coming together to create something meaningful. The young woman who had inspired so much of this transformation didn't stop at her new role as assistant manager. She poured her heart into mentoring, others teaching them not just how to do their jobs, but how to see the humanity in every interaction. Her coworkers admired her leadership style. It wasn't about barking orders or micromanaging. Instead, she led by example, showing everyone around her that even the smallest acts of care could make a big difference. One evening after closing time, she stood in the parking lot with Robert, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, casting long shadows across the asphalt. They were both exhausted from a busy day, but there was a sense of satisfaction in the air, like they'd accomplished something important. "You know," she said thoughtfully, breaking the comfortable silence between them, I never imagined my life turning out this way. When I first started working here, I just needed a paycheck. Now it feels like I'm part of something bigger." Robert smiled, nodding slowly. "That's exactly what we wanted. To give people a place where they feel valued. Not just for the work they do, but for who they are." She chuckled softly. "Funny how things work out, huh? A couple of months ago, I was just trying to get through each shift without losing my mind. Now I'm helping shape the future of this company. It's surreal. It's deserved," Robert replied firmly. "You've earned every bit of it, and honestly, you've taught me more than I ever expected to learn." Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Me? Teach you? Come on." "I'm serious," he insisted. "You reminded me why we're here. Before, I was so focused on numbers and strategies that I forgot about the people behind them. You brought me back down to earth. You showed me that success isn't about how much money we make. It's about how many lives we improve along the way." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of cars passing by filled the quiet space between them, punctuated only by the occasional chirp of crickets in the distance. Finally, she broke the silence. "So, what's next?" she asked, glancing at him curiously. "For you, I mean, for the company." Robert exhaled deeply, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We keep going. We build on what we've started. There's still so much work to do, so many ways we can grow and give back. But I think the foundation is solid now. People understand that this isn't just a job. It's a mission." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And what about you personally? Do you ever think about stepping away, taking a break?" He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Not anytime soon. This is where I belong, for now at least. Besides, I've got promises to keep." "Promises?" she echoed, tilting her head. "Yeah," Robert said, turning to face her. "To you, for one. Remember when you told me about your dream of opening a community center? Well, I meant what I said. I want to help make that happen. Whenever you're ready, I'll be there to support you every step of the way." Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a brief moment, she looked like she might cry. But instead she smiled, one of those rare, genuine smiles that lit up her whole face. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." Few years later, that promise became a reality. Standing beside her at the grand opening of the community center, Robert felt a deep sense of pride. The building was modest but welcoming, with bright colors on the walls and plenty of space for kids to play, study, and connect. Local families gathered outside, chatting excitedly as they waited to explore the facility. Volunteers handed out snacks and balloons while music played softly in the background. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, she stepped up to the microphone, visibly nervous but determined. "I don't usually like speaking in front of crowds," she admitted with a laugh, earning cheers and applause from the audience. "But today, I have to say thank you to everyone who helped make this possible." She went on to talk about her journey, the challenges she faced growing up, the sacrifices she made to take care of her siblings, and the hope she held on to even during the toughest times. She credited her co-workers, her mentors, and especially Robert for believing in her when she struggled to believe in herself. "When I started working at Burger Haven, I never dreamed I'd end up here," she said, gesturing to the bustling crowd around her. "But this place proves that anything is possible if you surround yourself with good people and stay true to your values. So thank you for showing me that kindness matters, that hard work pays off, and that dreams really can come true." When she finished speaking, the crowd erupted into applause. Robert clapped louder than anyone, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He knew this moment wouldn't have been possible without her courage, resilience, and unwavering belief in the power of community. Looking back, Robert realized that the night he went undercover changed everything, not just for Burger Haven, but for him personally. He'd walked into that restaurant expecting to gather insights and data, but he left with something far more valuable: a renewed sense of purpose. Burger Haven wasn't just a fast food chain anymore. It was a force for good, a company that prioritized people over profits and kindness over convenience. Employees felt empowered to bring their best selves to work, knowing they were valued not just for what they contributed, but for who they were. Customers returned not just because the food was good, but because they felt seen and appreciated. And as for Robert, he learned that leadership wasn't about titles or authority. It was about listening, learning, and lifting others up. By embracing empathy and humility, he transformed not only his business but also his own life. At the end of the day, it all came back to that simple act of kindness, a cashier paying for a stranger's meal. That one moment sparked a chain reaction that rippled far beyond anyone's expectations. It proved that no matter how chaotic or challenging the world may seem, compassion has the power to heal, inspire, and unite us. All it takes is someone brave enough to start. Standing there at the community center, surrounded by laughter and joy, Robert knew they were just getting started. Together, they had built something extraordinary, and the best part was yet to come.